And well, this is episode 3, so super excited. We've talked a couple weeks now about the global shift and some manifestation. And with this month being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we are going to shed some light on some of the statistics and also talk about energy. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, it sounds like we've covered our topics tonight quite well.
Okay, perfect. And for anyone who's joining us for the first time, this is Heaven Calling Earth. Again, episode 3. Pam Jenkins has been doing this how many years now?
No, we're not giving away my age. How many years have I been doing readings, or
how many years have you
been
psychicking?
All of my life.
Okay.
We just didn't label it that. I've known things all of my life. And I can remember as a kid, some of those things that, not went through my brain, but then found its way out of my mouth, got me in trouble.
I think we all have a problem with things finding their way out of our mouth and getting us in trouble at some point, right?
Yeah, I'd say.
But
these were things that just couldn't be explained for a child of that age, knowing them.
What age?
Well, the first thing that I can really remember was, I grew up in a family that is Baptist, and we went to the Baptist church. Now, let's see, 10 years old. That would have been about 1969. Okay.
Oh, so you gave away your age.
Yeah, I remember my age. So now I want you to think of the time frame. We go to a bridal shower for a young lady that is going to be getting married, and she's all of about 17 or 18 years old. And right in the middle of these Baptist women, I said, "When's the baby shower?" And of course, all the women knew that the girl was pregnant, but at 10 years old, we weren't even allowed to say that word, let alone be asking questions about, when there's going to be a baby shower for a young lady that hasn't even gotten married yet. My mother swore she would never take me out again. But I didn't realize what I'd done wrong,
Well,
hello, Neil.
Oh yeah, I was going to say welcome to Renee and Neil. Thank you guys for joining us.
Hi,
anyone who let us know that you're on, tell us where you're from, and we'll have a segment that you can ask questions at the end as usual. But tonight we're going to go ahead and start off with information about domestic violence. It's very important, I think. We have some statistics and some basically running down why do victims stay, because I'm going to tell you, I was always of the mindset I just can't understand why women stay in relationships or men stay in relationships where they're being abused physically or emotionally. And, having been
no mistake about it, emotional abuse is just as bad as physical abuse. It leaves different scars, but whether it's verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, or physical abuse, it's still abuse.
Well, it's just, I would say maybe not as easily recognizable, because clearly physical abuse is completely different. But emotional abuse, like you said, leaves emotional scars and it kind of throws you through a loop. But like I said, or I was headed towards, I have been a survivor of domestic violence at this point. So I know my whole perspective has changed, as to why you stay. You feel ashamed. That was the number one thing I felt, because I was an independent woman. I couldn't figure out, how did I get to where I'm at? Why was I here? And I definitely didn't want to tell anybody. I felt like I was going to be judged. That's a hard mindset to break when you just so alone.
That goes along, we tell ourselves stories in our minds, and we go over them and over them and over them, and we give all the reasons why it's justified, or I caused it, or you're too embarrassed, or there's any number of reasons. why people stay. And at least initially, it's easier to see from the outside than it is from the inside where you're experiencing it. And, sometimes outsiders recognize it before even the person that is in the middle of it experiencing it does.
Well, I will tell you from personal experience, I didn't even think that that was happening. I literally thought that it was because I did something wrong and I could prove that I didn't lie and I wasn't untrustworthy. And I just kept going through that cycle of just trying to prove a point before I realized that my whole world had changed. Everything had changed, the way I felt about myself, my trust for my own decisions. Like I still have problems making decisions. I call you all the time to,
But we're working through that.
yeah.
And it does take time to start to learn, to trust yourself again. And that's not just if somebody's in an abuse situation. If you have a history of um, making choices that seem to get you in trouble, it plays on the trust for yourself. You know, I, what I went through in California with, the upgrades of um, this vibrational shift and getting the information ahead of time. But I can tell you that, the initial stages of that made me question and trust what I was getting. And it's only because I have the foundation that I do that I was able to work past that. I even, you know, self diagnosed, but still, I dealt with some PTSD from that. And it took me a while to get to the place where I trusted what I was getting. And what I get has never in my entire life led me in a place that was wrong. So you can imagine where I was put in a position where I was questioning what I was getting.
Well, it does take time, and that PTSD thing is real. There's a lot of things once your mind starts getting clear again. And real quick, I wanted to say hi to Darlene from Garner, North Carolina, and Sandra. Let us know where you're from, Sandra. um, but yeah, I mean, it takes a long time to recover mentally, and really, the relationship wasn't that long. However, it takes a long time to recover, to pull yourself back out and figure out how you got there and how you can never let that happen again. Some of the statistics are 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe partner physical violence. They say on average 20,000 calls a day come into domestic violence hotlines, which is incredible. That's a lot of people. And it actually went up during COVID because people
And
are home more and child
because
abuse
people
went
are in
more.
lockdown and in close quarters.
Exactly.
And I can say it's much harder for a man to come forward and number one, recognize that there's any kind of abuse going on. Now more typically, men are going to experience verbal and emotional abuse than they do physical. But there are men that experience physical abuse, and that's even harder because, it throws a glare on their masculinity. And so it's even harder for them to come forward and say, somebody's raising their hand and they're doing it in such a way that, I don't feel good about it.
Yeah. I would say for both men and women, it's probably hard because, again, like I told you, I felt shame, which sounds crazy, but the important thing is that there's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's hard. It's a hard mindset to overcome when you're smack in the middle of everything and you feel like you just don't understand. I'm smart. How did I get here? It has nothing to do with your intelligence level or even recognizing signs because you don't even realize what's happening until you're so far in it that you can't even, you just have no clue what happened because their things are so subtle.
Yes, and most of the time when it's an abuse situation, what you do is have a partner that isolates the person that is being abused. And the purpose behind that isolation is to keep the outsiders from pointing out to the victim, the person that's being abused, that that's what's going on. Because on some, if it's not a conscious level, it is a subconscious level that the abuser knows what they're doing is wrong and they know that they're abusing this person. And it's there are so many levels on that side of it as well. How they became an abuser. Um, there's control issues, there's anger issues, and if both people don't recognize it, but especially the one that's perpetrating it doesn't want you to recognize it, and it doesn't want anybody else to recognize it, and that's why they keep people isolated.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there were times when obviously we would have disagreements, and there was like, well, why don't you go ask so and so's opinion? And then when they came back with an opinion different, it was like, well, forget that person. It's like they don't want you to. Then they discourage those relationships, so you don't even realize you're getting isolated. Honestly, at least I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't. And
most
then,
times people don't until they're so isolated that now they're, not only in an abuse situation, but they're almost afraid to call anybody because of the embarrassment, because of the shame, because, hey, I've, not kept up with my friendship. I
that's
haven't, I slighted my friends for this relationship, and now this relationship has got me in a position that I need to get out of.
That's exactly how you feel. And I'm so grateful that I had a friend that I felt she just encouraged and supported me. She knew what was going on, and I didn't want to recognize it probably and how serious it was. And she just kept asking me and encouraging me, when was I going to have enough? But she never judged me. So that's why I always felt like it could go back to her, because a lot of times your friends are going to say to you, why are you still in this? Why haven't you left? And it's not that simple at all. No matter what the situation, it's not that simple, because the person involved in the situation loves that person. On some level, they were good to them at some point, and they still are. They are that ideal romantic person in between, your blow ups. So it's
And
really hard to understand
what
that.
I tell people a lot of times, it's not necessarily what the relationship is, it's the fantasy and the fairy tale that you've built up in your mind. And so you start mourning that fairy tale that wasn't really your real life, real true life anyway. And you feel like you're throwing away something that's really good, when in reality it's not good. You're not throwing away anything good. You're ending the story that you're telling yourself that is basically a lie.
In some part, but I would say that from the perspective of the person that's involved too, they feel that it is good. Even though you can see it differently from the outside, but it is, you fall in love with somebody good. Even if it is the front for them, it's still, they do have good qualities. You just don't go in loving somebody that's nasty and abusive and horrible.
And where that usually comes from is there is a past life with that soul. This could be part of a karmic wheel that has to be rectified. It could, when we live, like consecutive past lives from, let's say, an earlier time. And we also live parallel lives, because the way that time actually works is the past is the present is the future, and it's all happening simultaneously. And so, that pull that you feel to that person is magnified by the fact that you have these other lives with them, and you're trying to rectify in your mind, you know, I thought that this was it. This was supposed to be it.
And that's so true. And again, I'd like you to explain. You told me, but for anyone that's watching that's curious or interested, when you have that strong pull, this. I've told you it was my shortest relationship, but it was the best and the worst all wrapped in one. So how do you get rid of that pull? I mean, it's so strong, and you feel so strongly connected. They call it the trauma bond. But what do you suggest for trying to break that? Because
There
it's hard.
there are emotional cords. You know, it's like we're attached to our physical body by virtue of the silver cord that keeps us, you know, in the physical body. Okay. Now think about this. You know, there are all these other yous in parallels that's going on. Well, some of the same people that you're having relationships in this timeline, you are in other timelines. And depending on what that timeline is showing, it's going to have a pull on the current one. And maybe what's happened is in the other one, things went horribly wrong. And you've come into this one to rectify it and make a different choice. Like it's sort of like watching that movie, The Butterfly Effect, and where they're jumping timelines, and each time they change one little minor thing, but it changes entire lives of everyone involved.
And we've said this before, but like the Back to the Future, if you run into your current self, you could change your whole future, your whole timeline.
Well, that's the point of this timeline anyway, is to change it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this, I believe this is the one where we're pulling them all back together into unity. And Neil had asked earlier, what is the vibrational shift? That's what it is. We are changing in physical location, the earth itself, and we are ascending and going up. And if you think of it like the fallen angels, or, you know, the fall of man from the Garden of Eden, we're headed back to paradise. Okay. We descended a staircase to get down here to the third dimension. And now we have to ascend that staircase to go back to paradise. Okay. And this timeline is bringing all of those things back together. And this chaotic and polarized situation that we're in with everything that's happening is all about waking people up and, you know, hitting your trigger points where you start remembering. I've done this before, and I've had the extreme experiences where I've done the re-entries into this timeline, and usually the re-entry has, you know, you died in the other timeline, in another timeline, and those are re-entry points, if you will. And let me tell you, when it first started happening, it knocked me off my balance, and I've been prepped for it. So, you know, anybody that doesn't know what's going on, it's certainly going to have that kind of effect on you. Once I got the hang of what was going on, I knew, all right, you know, we're in a re-entry point, or, you know, and I started thinking about and I could remember the reviews and the life lessons, and I could focus on any one person that's on my inner circle, you know, and do a meditation, and I'll know what lesson that I'm supposed to be learning with that person. You know, and I've gone through situations where I knew, you know, that's part of where my psychic abilities come from, is because I've done these timelines so many times, you know, and I've been sent back so many times. I've gotten further in this timeline than I ever have in any of the others. And, you know, I can see what's playing out because I've already lived it before. And, you know, we're just taking small little turns from where they are. And I can see the horizon of what the possibilities are. Okay. And depending on what people do, because we have individual consciousness and we have group consciousness. And, you know, like let's just use the political thing as an example. Okay.
Just an example.
Whatever happens there is because there is a greater number of people that want it than the people that don't want it. And so that's with whichever way it goes. That's where the greater number of people that are in consciousness are bringing it. Does that make sense?
It does. It's that whole one. We all have the same mind. We're all. That's
right. We are one. We are one mind.
And so we can all see the same things because we are all thinking. And essentially, we all can we all, if we tapped into our own intuition, we all would know, what others are thinking and how they're feeling. If you're in
Well,
tune.
and you see, we come from a place of having a lot of abilities. Okay. Think of all your earthly senses, but think of them as magnified and amplified. Like, we communicate by actually speaking to one another. But we've come from a place and are headed back to a place where we can communicate telepathically. And the thing with that is, when some of that comes in and you're literally hearing voices, that's why people are diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, because there aren't enough people that are there to help those people to tell them this is what's happening. So they're diagnosed and, they may be coming in at a lower frequency. And so they're dealing with lower level astral things. They haven't learned all the lessons that they need to. And so it's playing out in a negative way. But when you start coming to an awareness, then you can look at, something that is negative that's being presented to you and just basically tell them, you don't have any power here. You can't scare me. Okay. And that's no matter what the situation is, whether it's, there are people that believe in demons and that a demon can attach itself. Or let's say the people that believe in aliens and they think, okay, I've got an alien that's attached to me. So what it's going to play out for them is they're going to see, depending on what they've been exposed to as far as aliens, it's going to play out that way. Does that make sense?
It does. I understand it. If anyone has any questions with that, please let us know, and we'll make sure we unpack it a little more.
Renee, I wanted to ask if you have any questions because I know you've got to go at 7:30, or has she already popped out? Looks like she's popped out already.
I'm not sure if she's popped out or not. But I mean, we all have the sense of intuition. I know for me, the clearer things are getting, the more removed I am from my own personal situation that I was dealing with, the clearer things have gotten for me. I spend more time daily meditating and just trying to become clear. And those little things that I was hearing before, are now I'm becoming clear. I don't have to get smacked upside the head by God like the fifth time that he tells me. I'm actually listening when they're little whispers now.
And that's the thing. When God created us in his image, he didn't mean in a physical body with, hands and feet and ears and nose. He meant that he made us as co-creators. And so we create our reality that we're living in. But it's so much easier to just blame somebody else, Why did you do this to me, God? You wanted free will, so I gave it to you. Ask and you shall receive. Along with that free will comes responsibility. And the responsibility is taking ownership of what you're creating, whether it's a relationship that you're wanting to learn a lesson about, or whether you're creating things that you desire in your life.
Renee did have a question for you. She said she's just trying to see more clearly how to be present with people who are so combative during this time.
Yes. Renee, how about if I give you the lottery numbers instead? Trying to get people to not be combative, and that's the biggest thing that we have lost and we need to regain, is how to have respectful and meaningful conversations without attacking one another. It is a lost art form for sure. I have friends on both sides of the aisle on both of these issues. And, it even at times gets to me, and I have to take a step back and remind myself that I'm supposed to be observing, not participating so much. But, all of these shakeups, Renee, are about people's realizing, that things aren't as they're presented. And I don't care who's presenting it, it's never the way it's being presented. Okay. And we're supposed to be coming to the realization that we are living in many layers of illusions. Okay. And, if people would, instead of taking a headline or taking what a little blip from the middle of a conversation and taking it out of context. And, after you've heard enough of that, you would think that people would start researching,
Fact
research,
checking, please. Fact check.
and don't count on the social media fact checkers, because they also have a lien. Okay, you have to do your own research, and I don't care what the issue is. One of the things I tell people, it tells us right in the Bible: ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. That's as literal as it gets. We're being told to become seekers of the truth. And whether you're seeking the truth about how this universe actually works, or whether you're seeking the truth about whether this virus is everything we've been told, or whether we should vote one way or another. Okay. We've got to do all of those things. And, I'll reiterate to you, how do we have conversations without being attacked? I take the middle of the road and I still feel those attacks sometimes. And I try not to get on too much on one side or the other, but, and express the beliefs and tell people, look at this and look at that. But in the end, each and every individual has to make up their own mind what they're going to believe. We all have a right to believe whatever we believe. We don't have a right to insist that other people believe the same way, no matter what that belief is about, whether it's about religion, whether it's about politics, whether it's about viruses. How we get there, that's on each one of us. And we can, again, respectfully and kindly speak to others about how we got to where we were. But when you have people that just shut it down and won't even hear another side of it, you may as well just take a breath, count to 10, and walk away, because you're not going to tear that wall down. They've made up their mind. They know it all. And they do, because they've closed their mind and they've closed their heart, and they know everything they're ever going to know about the situation. And that's really sad.
And that's
we have so much to learn.
I mean, I've heard the saying, if you're not growing and learning, you're dying. If you're stuck in your own ways, you're not going to get any further, because you're just on that hamster wheel that you already know everything.
That's right.
Neil had a question. He's asking for any good meditation videos for a beginner, and how does the shift help him, and how.
And what's that second part?
How, let's see. I think he asked this again.
What's HPW, Neil?
How. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that's probably how.
Okay. I would suggest to anybody that's just starting out with meditation to get a guided meditation. I always like and refer beginners to Dr. Brian Weiss, and he has some that you can listen to them on YouTube. And these are guided meditations. You can also download them. I think Hay House Publications has them, and they're about $7 a piece. Now, keep in mind, there are thousands of people that do guided meditations. And if you don't resonate with Dr. Brian Weiss, then you can pick one that you would resonate with and listen to it. Now, I suggest those, be done in the morning or the evening time. If you're wanting to raise your vibration and, helping to move to a new level, another thing to listen to is the solfeggio frequencies, which can be found on YouTube as well. And I always suggest to people that they find one that has all 9 frequencies, because it's a gradual workup to the highest. If you go in and you've not ever done it before and you start at a 900, you're going to give yourself a headache. But if you start at the low end and, let it play through, and there are some that are on there that are like 3 hours. There are ones that have 9 hours, so that if you want to play it while you're sleeping. I always also listen to both the guided meditations and the solfeggio frequencies by using a headset or earbuds. because that brings it in closer to the brain waves, which is where you want to resonate with. And it's an easier way to block out the rest of the room and what's going on.
And just a little tip, Neil, I've had problems. And as a beginner, I kept falling asleep. So it's okay to fall asleep. Just keep trying. You'll get it. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself because you can get frustrated.
And, I see your next question here, Neil, is about, pressure from family to get a degree, or you're a failure and you can't make money. Neil, you can't live for other people. Okay. You have to live for you. Now, if you've got responsibilities, you got to have enough money to make the rent and buy the groceries and feed the kids and, whatever go along with those responsibilities. You know, everybody has their idea of what success is. Neil has to find what Neil's idea of success is. If that's being a carpenter and having your own business, then by God, that's what you should do. And there are a whole lot of people out here that'll tell you just having a degree does not mean that you're going to have a job making money. Okay. And there are many ways, to earn money. I personally um, was not able to go to college, but I've had two careers that have been very good to me, and I've enjoyed them and I've been passionate about them. I was a court reporter for 22 years, and I was trained by another lady from a reporting firm. So I have, I took a couple of college classes, but this is something that I was taught as a trade. Okay. And I worked with attorneys and judges. I've done a contract on Capitol Hill. That's how I know, how things operate up there in DC. It's also why I tell people make sure you research what you're being told. Okay. Because they have a unique relationship with the truth. Okay. Um, so degrees don't mean it all. Krista has, as my one son says, more degrees than a thermometer. Um, you can run the scale on that. And, bless her heart, she's done it all on her own. She's got that student debt that she's got to pay, and ended up, she's very successful. But again, college degree doesn't guarantee you're going to get out there and make money.
It does not, Neil, and it does not ensure happiness. So please let me tell you before you take a leap into that student debt, just decide what you want to do. You do not have to go to college to be successful. I told my daughter, you do not have to go to college, but you will be dedicated 100% to something. If you want to start your own business, go all the way in. Just you find what you are motivated by and don't let anybody else. I'm just learning this. You have to define yourself, write it down, make notes. I've defined so many different lists for myself to figure out who I am and learning about what I like to do. So I know who I am, because it's hard to define yourself if you're trying to please everybody else.
It's not about, and you say family, you didn't say which family. I'm going to make an assumption here that it's, maybe parents, but, your parents have already gotten a chance to live their lives and choose their careers. You get to do that same thing. Yes, we want our parents to be proud of us, and we want them to know that we're going to be okay. But more than being okay and out here making six figures, it's more important that you find your passion and be happy with what you're doing. Because, I live in, or did live in, the DC area. I've moved a bit further out away from it because I wanted to get away from the congestion and traffic. But I can tell you, people driving up and down 95 every day, day in and day out, how unhappy some of these people are, because they're like zombies. They're in zombie mode. They get in their cars and they go to work, and it takes them an hour and a half to 2 hours to get there, and the same amount to come home. It's a lot. And I see you said your family is in India, and so they pressure you. They want you to live the American dream, right? Have you told them what a mess it is over here yet? you know, it's where you are, dear. And what you decide is your passion and what you want to do. And again, if you're going to go to college, and there's nothing wrong with that, if that's what your heart desires, but make sure that it's your heart that desires it. Okay. And don't become a lawyer because your dad is, or a doctor because your dad is. If you want to be a plumber, and I understand they can make some pretty good money. You decide what that passion is for you. I understand about parents, they want what they want, but as they progress in their soul journey, they'll figure it out. You know, but if you do what you're going to do strictly for them, you're going to end up resenting them, and you don't want that either.
Yeah, you'll start to feel good about yourself if you define who you are. You define what you like. And again, I can't stress enough, don't go to school if that's not your thing. You do not have to go to school to make money, because you will, over time, you will start to realize. And I went to school because I thought that was the only way to get ahead. And if I had slowed down a little bit and gotten into real estate when I was younger, I would have been on a lot different path now, and I wouldn't have all those degrees. Not that I can't appreciate it, because they do help me, but I just think if I had planned a little better and thought things a little bit more, or thought things through a little bit more, I would have been on a different path. And I would say just as happy, maybe a little bit happier.
And I understand that, I understand a bit about the culture of people from India. And so, yeah, I have a pretty good idea of what kind of pressure you're under. But you're still going to have to come to terms with yourself about what you're going to do with it. Now, Krista, did you want to talk about the energy?
Yes. Well, the energy in regards to Halloween or attachments, because we kind of started talking a little bit more about people's beliefs in attachments and, using sage and crystals and things like that.
Okay. Um, again, we are going through stages with this vibrational shift where, the energy is amplifying, and it's getting faster and louder. Okay. And in order to come into this dimension, we slowed ourselves down. Okay. We're moving to a higher frequency, which means faster waves. And those are light waves and sound waves. And the veil is getting thinner between here, what we see in our light spectrum, versus what they can see in the higher frequencies, in the higher dimensions. Okay. And we would think it invisible, but as the veil gets thinner, more of these things, more people are activating their third eye, and they're able to see things that they couldn't otherwise see, and experience things. And each person, the the sense, whatever sense it is that they're working with, whether it's third eye sense, which is clairvoyance, clairaudience is the hearing, clairsentience is the feeling. I don't know what the clair is for the taste, but each one of the senses has that. And they don't bring all those senses in at the same exact time, because it would be overwhelming. They bring in a little at a time. And I know there are a number of people that are going through experiences with, like, you'll be fine, and then all of a sudden you feel like the room is spinning, or you're getting dizzy, you've got vertigo. And that is because these frequencies are amped up. Okay. What stage of the shift are we in? I would say that we're at least at the half to three quarters mark. I can't put that in terms of a timeline or give you a date. You know, people say, well, when's it going to be over? You know, another one of those lottery number questions. Um, you know, if you take it from the stance, no one left behind, then we got a ways to go because there's a whole lot of people that haven't woken up yet. They don't know that this is even going on.
I was
Now,
just getting ready to say there's a lot of people who are not ready.
exactly. Now, again, keeping in mind that, you know, the way it's been shown to me is the past is the present is the future, and all of this stuff is happening simultaneously. So if we come to, let's say, the halt point in this particular timeline, let's say some huge event happens, and I've experienced the ending of timelines with different endings, okay? You know, where we ended with an alien invasion, where we ended with, you know, different things of this nature. Anything that you can think of is a way that a timeline can end, whether it's with your death or just coming to a full on stop in the timeline. But okay, now let's say we've got people that, you know, we got to that full on stop or the person's death and they weren't where they needed to be as far as their soul journey. Okay. They can be sent back into one of the parallel timelines that's going on at the same time. And think of it as, you know, being the same self that's living now. Um, and you made a wrong turn and you died. Okay. Well, right before you died is the point where you will re enter in that other timeline. Okay. And you keep going through these timelines and these experiences until you get it, until you get to a place where you're sitting back with everything that's going on right now and saying, oh, I remember this. Okay, I'm going to watch. I'm just going to see how this one plays out.
I want
Yeah.
to volunteer and say I don't want to go through this again. 2020 is like one big month, and I'm ready to move on to the next one.
And again, you know, my encouragement to people is to become seekers. You know, everything that's going on outside of you and your circle is a bit more than a distraction. Okay. And you have to set those distractions down and start looking inside of you. And, you know, however you get there, whether it's through, you know, as you guys can see, the library here with all the books, I read a lot. And I don't read on any one subject. I mean, I have quite a bit of fiction as well as nonfiction. I have books on aliens, and I have books on ascension, and I have a shelf over here with different versions of the Holy Bible, the King James version, the new something edition, like a Schofield edition, and I also have the Quran. And I have read not the entire Quran, but I have read parts of it. Okay. And so I look at everything. I read everything. I read all of the different philosophies, all the different religions, and I pull out of it what resonates with me, what feels true and honest to me. And you know, I've read this one book, or actually it's a series, but it's very much against psychics. Okay. But the it's a channeled book, and you have to realize that books that are channeled, you know, come through the filter of the person that's actually doing the channeling, the writing. Okay. So as they may get the information in a very, very pure manner, but then it comes down through our distortions and our beliefs. And some of those distortions of our own beliefs can end up in channeled material. Okay. And you have to recognize that going in when you're reading it, you know, because this series of books that I've read, there's 30 books in the series, and I'm in about number 16. Well, very good material. But if I had listened to what was being said about somebody that does the type of work that I did, I would have thrown the first book out and never read another one. But it's been a very helpful series for me. Okay. Um, that saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Read through the stuff. And there's even, lessons that we can learn in reading fiction material. Um, I can remember one, and I think the author's name is Wally Lamb. I know this much is true. That book had some lessons in it, and I laid in my pool on my float reading that book. And I got to tell you, as I'm reading some of the things that are going on between these people, I'm laughing, because it's just, the lessons are right in front of us. But, a lot of times what's happening is we're not paying attention. We can learn from everything, whether it be a TV show or a movie. And we get messages in all of these things, but the messages are lost sometimes, and it depends on what you're focusing on. I watch a soap opera that I've watched since I was a kid. And, they've been dealing with a series on, how they dealt with somebody that had Alzheimer's when my mom had dementia, and watching this whole, if you take these different programs and apply some of the things that are going on between the people, all relationships are work. Pay attention to some of the things that we're watching and say, yeah, that's not the right way to work. That's not the, for a lot of people, they have a fight and the go-to is to go have an affair with somebody else instead of going back and talking to the person that you're in the relationship with. We can pay attention to some of these TV shows and movies and recognize that there are lessons that we could apply to our own lives. It just depends on what message you focus on, because there are positive messages and there are negative messages.
And also, whatever you focus on is what you attract more of. So make sure that you're focusing on things you want to attract to your life.
That's right. That's right. And if you're not in a good mindset, then you have to, I'll give you an example. When I went through the intensity of some of the things I did in California, I got to experience what people felt like with government mind control. And not too long after that, I guess it was about a year or so, the original Manchurian Candidate came on, and my husband saved it on the DVR. And we sat down to start watching it. And a good 15 minutes into it, it's like, I can't watch this. It's too soon. It's too close. It's too real. I just can't watch it. And for a period of time, we went back to some of the old, healthy shows like The Waltons, and that gave me peace. Watching things like that, was much more, like it or not, back in that time frame, TV programming was much healthier than it is today.
Is that reality though? Or was that just a
yes, Krista, actually, I know it's before your time, but there were people that lived like the people on Walton's Mountain. And, there were families that actually got along. I can remember growing up that every Sunday
they knew that they were fighting.
What's that?
I said, or just no one was aware of what was really going on. It's just people are more aware now.
Maybe too aware, because sometimes the arguments and disagreements come about over really stupid things and over stories we're telling ourselves or creating. You might have a situation with someone and, it boils down to a misunderstanding. But after you part ways and you go off to your own little corners, you start adding to that misunderstanding by telling yourself stories in your head about what was said, what was meant, what was done. And by the time you get to, it's kind of like the news today. By the time that you get to it, there's a little sliver of truth in there. There's a little sliver of fact, but the rest of it is embellishment.
Right.
And you know, that was in a time when they didn't do a lot of embellishing. You know, when families had 8 kids, there wasn't time, you know. And I know not everybody had a healthy, you know, upbringing, but a lot of us that are from larger families, you know, there wasn't time to get into stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
true.
that's what people need to do is have more kids.
Yeah, no. I say mine is like 3 people in one, so I don't need to have.
That may well be.
She has enough personality for 3 people.
Yes, but I can remember saying to you, you know, one day you're going to have a child. And God's sense of humor is that whatever you've done with your parents and however hard a time you've given them, you better believe you're going to get it tenfold.
It's an
And I would say that's played out pretty well for you, hasn't it?
Neil has a question. How do you create a better relationship with God? Asking questions.
He answers through actions in funny ways. Those are what I would call synchronicities, Neil. And uh, you have to. The talking to God is important, and you can get answers either through actions, through signs. Um, you can also get answers through meditation. I believe in prayer as well as meditation. Prayer is when you are asking God for something or thanking Him, giving gratitude. And then when you meditate, you're listening for that guidance. And, you know, I believe that God delegates, okay? Um, he's tuned into all of us, but at the same time, you know, he's given us spirit guides and guardian angels. And that's why you may hear it in different voices or see it, you know, different people believe different things. And so, you know, somebody that has a strong belief in angels may communicate with their angels directly. And someone that, you know, believes in the direct communications. I've never been one that believed we had to go confess to another man and have that man forgive us. You know, I've always talked directly to God, and that's always made it an easier relationship for me because I've always understood or felt or heard what was being said directly to me. I didn't need somebody else to come tell me what I was doing wrong, when I was doing it wrong, or how I was doing it wrong. Because even if I was wrong in the eyes of 1,000 other people, if I felt that I was in tune with what God wanted me to do, those 1,000 people couldn't talk me out of what I was doing because I
And
knew it was right for me.
I'd like to add to that, I have gotten more in tune, like I said, with I feel like with God telling me what I need to do. I get what I call my clarity in the morning after sometimes meditating in the morning, and you just those little things that you just know that you're hearing, that's God telling you what to do. And if you've got that gut feeling like it's a bad idea, that's God or the universe, your angels telling you, don't do that. So you really, if you can listen and hear them subtly instead of watching for a sign, you'll get more in tune. And meditation helps with that. I've only learned because I've been asking my mom for years.
And the more you meditate and the more you get those direct answers. You know, I always tell people, yes, I have a gift, and yes, I can hear, you know, I can communicate with people that have crossed over, and I can get messages for other people. I can look at things. And again, part of that is because of doing this time. I've done it wrong so many times. They've sent me back so many times. And now I'm in a position of remembering and being able to see. So, you know, I've got a little bit of an advantage there. But what I try to do is direct people into how to tune into it for themselves. Because if there's ever a God given right, it is that. It is your own internal GPS system. And all you have to do is connect with it and practice with it. And you know, a lot of people say they hear things or see things and it scares them. And so they basically turn it off, they shut it down. Well, you know, that's like having a GPS in your car and not ever putting the address in that you want to go to. And so the car can't give you directions if you haven't told it where you want to go. But when you have a relationship with God and you talk and you then listen and you get the answers, you can get them directly. And the more you practice with it, the more you learn to trust what you're getting. And that's how it comes in. And Lola, what you're seeing is what we call angel numbers or synchronicities. And, you know, you can Google them or, and I know she's disavowed all of her material now, but it's still very good material. There, Doreen Virtue has a book called Angel Numbers. And, you know, there's a book with signs and it's got all the numbers listed in it and what the different numbers mean. Or you can just, you know, pop them in Google and look at in a search engine of any kind, really.
Just
And,
pop them in Google.
and gives it will give the different meanings. And when you get that meaning, check it and see if it resonates with you. Okay. It's kind of like looking at a book that defines different dreams, and they'll say, you know, this dream means this or that dream means that. Dream encyclopedias with the definitions of what signs mean in the dreams. It's a good point of reference, but always go within and see if that meaning resonates with you. It's a good starting point, but it's not an ending point. It's where, you know, it's kind of like you're opening the dictionary and, you know, you're seeing 3 different definitions to the same word. And dreams and numbers take on an individual meaning. Now, I see our time is almost up, so I would like to remind people that keeping a dream journal, especially now, is a really good idea because you can have a dream and it mean one thing the morning when you wake up. And then 6 months from now, it can mean something completely different than it did that day you woke up. Plus, when things start to play out, you know, sometimes dreams are literal, sometimes they're symbolic. And you have to learn to discern which is which and what does it mean. Like, let's say somebody dies in a dream. That doesn't mean it's going to be a literal death. I've experienced both. Okay. And you have to learn to discern the difference, you know, figure out what is a literal meaning and what is symbolic.
And also, just to thank you guys again for joining us every other week. This is our 3rd episode, and we hope to keep growing. So please like and share. Let everybody know what we're doing. Jump on here, make this interactive. And if you would like a private reading, I put the link in the description, so that way you can get a private reading. Thank you guys again. And please do let us know if there's a specific topic you'd like us to talk about or you have any questions, and we can cover that for you going forward.
Yeah, and please feel free to share the link with the video with your friends. They can watch it. You know, those that couldn't see it live can, you know, watch it in the replay. You all now have my email address from where I sent you the links to watch the show. You can email at that link or the Pam at Heaven Calling Earth and give us topics that you would like us to discuss in future episodes.
And I think we had one last question from Darlene. How can you get someone to come in your dream that has passed?
Yeah. Okay, that's a visit, Darlene. And, you know, what I'm hearing is your pain wall is still a bit high. You have been visited, but you just don't remember it. I'm going to ask you to say a prayer before you go to sleep at night and ask to remember. And, you know, actually speak to the person that has crossed over that you want to come and ask them to come and visit you. And what I'm hearing is that within the next week, before we have our next episode, you're going to have one of those visits and you're going to come back and tell us about it in our next episode.
So we will be
make sure you write it down.
We will be expecting a full recap, Darlene. Our next show is going to be on the 27th. of October at 7 o'clock. So again, let us know if there's anything you'd like to talk about or questions you guys have. And thank you guys again for joining us this week.
Thank you. Good night.